By the beginning of 1931, Germany had entered a phase even darker than the Great Depression. The crisis was no longer merely economic statistics, but a suffocating social reality affecting almost every household. This is the rise of Hitler. Unemployment approached 30% of the workforce, meaning that nearly a third of the working-age population was outside the production cycle, without any clear prospects or real guarantees. Almost half of these workers did not even receive regular social assistance, transforming unemployment from an economic crisis into a social time bomb. The mining sector stands out as the most egregious example of the collapse of the German industrial economy. This sector, which for decades had been the backbone of the energy and industrial sectors, witnessed mass layoffs of nearly 300,000 workers, accompanied by drastic wage cuts for those who were allowed to remain. The result was an explosion of strikes and protests, no longer limited to demands for improved living conditions, but escalating into a direct political confrontation over who bore responsibility for the collapse. The Communists seized the moment as a historic opportunity to mobilize the working class against capitalism and the state, pushing for wider strikes and a paralysis of economic life. In contrast, moderate parties, primarily the Social Democrats, attempted to curb the escalation, warning against a descent into chaos that could destroy what remained of the Republican system. But the voice of reason was lost amidst the anger and despair, and the streets became an open stage for violence. Police opened fire in several cities, workers were killed, and the image of the state as a force of repression rather than a neutral arbiter became firmly entrenched in the minds of many. The Nazis, for their part, did not seek to calm the situation, but rather deliberately fueled the chaos, believing that the collapse of stability was the quickest way to bring down the Weimar Republic. Politically, the government of Heinrich Brüning, with the direct support of President Paul von Hindenburg, responded by resorting to a tool that had become both familiar and dangerous: the emergency decree. This decree granted the executive branch broad powers to intervene in labour disputes and impose top-down solutions. While the decree effectively ended the miners' strike through a compromise, cancelling layoffs in exchange for a 6% wage cut, it fundamentally enshrined a disturbing trend: the marginalisation of Parliament and the erosion of parliamentary democracy in favour of an exceptional regime based on presidential decrees rather than political consensus. Amid this turbulent landscape, Adolf Hitler was quietly but resolutely reshaping the Nazi movement from within. Ernst Röhm's return from exile and his appointment as Chief of Staff of the SA were not merely organisational changes, but declarations of intent. The SA was gradually transforming from a chaotic party militia into a more disciplined paramilitary force, with a rigid hierarchy and direct personal loyalty to Hitler. This development alarmed both Social Democrats and Communists, who saw it as preparation for an internal confrontation or even a potential civil war. The left-wing press was sounding the alarm, while much of the conservative media preferred to downplay or ignore the event, as if silence could avert the coming storm. Ideologically, Hitler was attempting to polish his public image at this stage. His unexpected appearance in an interview with a Jewish journalist starkly revealed this contradiction. Carefully chosen language, an explicit denial of advocating violence, and repeated emphasis on legitimacy and the law. However, this conciliatory rhetoric clashed with a starkly different reality on the streets, where his supporters continued their incitement and attacks, and where anti-Semitism remained the cornerstone of Nazi mobilization, regardless of any changes in rhetoric. Symbolically, the 60th anniversary of the founding of the German Empire reflected the deep divisions within society. The government and Hindenburg used the occasion to call for respect for the state and the constitutional order, attempting to link the imperial past with the legitimacy of the Republic. Hitler, on the other hand, appropriated the same symbol to attack democracy, glorifying Bismarck's Reich as a product of conflict, not consensus, and presenting himself as the historical heir to that lost powerful state. The communists boycotted the celebrations entirely, deeming them a reactionary and imperialist spectacle with no bearing on the future of the working class. In the shadows, the situation grew increasingly dangerous. Hitler's secret meeting with Army Chief of Staff General Kurt von Hammerstein reveals his attempt to infiltrate the military establishment, or at least neutralize it. Hitler is testing the possibility of an understanding between the Nazi movement and the Reichswehr. But the military leadership, keen to maintain its constitutional and professional character, refuses to engage with political extremism. This refusal does not stop Hitler's ambitions, but it postpones them. Globally, Germany appears to be no exception to the general turmoil. Coups in Latin America, cracks in colonial empires with the progress of the Indian independence movement, diplomatic tensions with fascist Italy, and high unemployment in Britain and the United States. Nevertheless, Germany remains the weakest link, where economic collapse intersects with political extremism, and the crisis transforms from an emergency into a historical trajectory that threatens a larger explosion. Now, crucial questions are being raised about Germany's future. Is unemployment on the way down, or is the country heading for a deeper recession? How will Ernst Röhm begin to reconstitute the SA, and what will that mean for internal stability? At the same time, the debate continues about Hitler's ambitions. Is he truly the heir to Bismarck and the herald of a new German Reich, or just a leader who is exploiting the crisis? And, most importantly, will he keep his public promises to stick to political propaganda without resorting to repressive and violent policies? Don't forget to subscribe. See you next time.